Nobody has collapsed worse to start the year than Florida State. It has been just absolutely brutal. They were one of the few teams that did play during week 0, and they got upset in Ireland by a conference opponent as the number 10 team in the country. So week 1 was obviously a much needed get-right game, and it just wasn't. Instead, FSU got beat even worse. And now, after week 1, Florida State is 0-2 in ACC play. What a stat. Every hope of another ACC championship or college football playoff appearance this year is essentially completely thrown out the window before week 2. It really just couldn't be too much worse for FSU. But man, I think it's very possible just maybe FSU just sucks. But first, thank you to DraftKings for sponsoring today's video. Football is back. The season is starting to kick off, and it's the perfect time to dive into the action with our partners over at DraftKings, the #1 place to bet on touchdowns. And right now, all new customers that bet $5 on any wager get $250 in bonus bets and 1 month of NFL Plus Premium. That's something we can all celebrate. So yes, that's $250 in bonus bets after wagering only $5 and 1 month of NFL Plus Premium. You can use those bonus bets to bet anytime touchdowns on DraftKings, the place to bet on touchdowns. If sports betting is not yet available in your state, no worries. You can still join in on the fun with DraftKings Daily Fantasy, so download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. New customers use our promo code JDPROD, bet $5 on any wager, and get $250 in bonus bets instantly. That's promo code JDPROD only at DraftKings Sportsbook. The crown is yours. Thanks again to DraftKings, and let's get right back to the video. Boston College was supposed to be the get-right game for Florida State. They had a bad week 0 loss to an ACC opponent in Georgia Tech, and now you're just playing a different ACC opponent, and you are supposed to beat them by double digits. Instead, the game went even worse. Back with the entire country watching them, this time it was on Monday night, at home, not in Ireland, at home, and they were even worse. Boston College, they jumped out to a 14-0 lead early in the second quarter. They had a touchdown run from Thomas Castellanos. Then Castellanos hit Trayshawn Ward for a touchdown. FSU did get 2 field goals before the end of the half, but it still just wasn't pretty. FSU ended up stalling out down in the red zone, and DJ Uiagalelei just looked awful, man. I mean, he was missing wide open receivers. He was hard to watch. The first half just couldn't have been much more disappointing, and it made it feel like week 0 wasn't a fluke. FSU was just literally bad. They had to get their shit together to start the second half, and it definitely felt like FSU still did have a really good chance to put it together. And then of course BC starts the half with a pick, and then quickly Castellanos has a touchdown pass, and it's 21-6. At that point, I mean, it just felt like rock bottom. It was completely deflating. FSU did respond later in the quarter, and DJU finally threw a touchdown pass. That was FSU's only touchdown of the game. And then Kai Robichaud, who had already caught a touchdown earlier in the quarter, ended up rushing for a touchdown to make it 28-13. And that was it, 28-13. Boston College wins, and it's another brutal loss to fall to 0-2 for FSU. Both conference losses. It's just been a terrible start, and somehow it got even worse from week 0. FSU got to play early. They got to play in week 0. They headed out to Ireland. They played Georgia Tech. They were number 10 in the country and obviously had some huge expectations. Those cooled off a bit this week after the loss to Georgia Tech, but obviously none of those expectations are coming to fruition. We did make a video after that FSU loss, and it was certainly something. You know, it was a fun game to kick off the season at the very least. It got off to a hot start with back-to-back touchdowns, and it kind of felt like it was going to be a bit of a barn burner, and then it just wasn't. It cooled down. FSU tied the game late, but Georgia Tech was able to just sit on the ball, and eventually they drilled the field goal to win it as time expired, 24-21. At the time, I think some of the thought process was, hey, maybe, Georgia Tech is legit. They certainly were underrated, I think, but now Georgia Tech just doesn't look like a great team. Instead, it feels more like FSU, well, they just suck. They've lost back-to-back, and the Boston College loss was way worse. Florida State is now just only the 3rd FBS school in the last 45 years to lose back-to-back to start the season as double-digit double-digit favorites. And so far this year, only 3 times has a double-digit favorite lost. FSU's done it twice. Of course, the other was Virginia Tech against Vanderbilt. Don't even get me started on the Hokies. We're going to talk about them eventually. It's crazy how much Florida State has already regressed just from a season ago when they literally went 12-0 in the regular season and won the ACC championship. There was obviously a lot of talk about how they didn't make the college football playoff, which, yeah, I mean, I think they deserve to get in, but so much of that team is gone now. We talked about it in the last FSU video, but they had a ton of dudes drafted, and you have to look at how much worse the roster is now. The defense looks completely different without Jared Verse and Brandon Fisk, plus 2 corners got drafted too. It's just a mess, and DJ Uiagalelei has been the best example of the problem. He looks terrible. He's hard to watch. You know, it feels like he just can't throw the ball downfield at all. And honestly, I did think he was going to have a good season. I thought FSU was going to win the ACC. It seemed like Oregon State had kind of figured out the right way to use him. And I mean, DJ even had an 11-win season at Clemson, which now just appears to be an incredible coaching performance from Dabo Swinney. I don't know how you can be optimistic about this offense. And it's not like DJU has appeared to have too much help either. You know, his numbers have been terrible, but it felt like even when he was, you know, making his rare good passes, his receivers were still dropping them. He just went 21 of 42. He only completed 50% of his throws with a touchdown and an interception. He wasn't great, and he couldn't get the ball moving, and his receivers were dropping passes, and it didn't help that FSU just didn't have a run game. BC rushed for 263 yards. It felt like they were able to just move the ball at will. FSU, they rushed for 21 yards. Yeah, 21 yards. It was a bad performance on both sides of the ball. Once again, FSU deserved to lose. They deserved to lose at Georgia Tech too, but at least they looked competent. Week 1 was a legitimate disaster, and FSU has to get right now against Memphis on Saturday, and then they come with a long stretch of must-win ACC games. Things really couldn't get too much worse for FSU fans right now, and honestly, I just feel bad at this point. But I do think you have to give credit to the opposing team. You know, we gave some credit to Georgia Tech after they looked really good. The same is the case here. Bill O'Brien had his guys ready to play, man. Looking over that roster, there aren't a lot of guys that really stick out, you know, for the next level, at least for the 2025 draft. They haven't been good in recent seasons at BC, but they have still churned out some good NFL prospects. Offensive guard Christian Mahogany and quarterback Elijah Jones were both 2 high-ish picks last year. They're gone now. BC doesn't have a ton of NFL talent, but you have to have some faith in Bill O'Brien, you know, to be able to create some. Thomas Castellanos, man, he is fun to watch. He's just a fun player. He was last year too. He didn't exactly excel passing the ball. You know, he had 15 touchdowns, 14 interceptions, but he rushed for 1,100 yards and 13 touchdowns. You know, he's a fun player, and we still have 2 more seasons we get to watch him improve. Boston College is a team I'm not super high on still. I've gotten to watch them play live a few times in the past few seasons, and it was really fun to watch them, like especially when Zay Flowers was there, but I'll also see them play live in October against Virginia Tech, which should be pretty cool. At first, I thought it'd be good that, you know, Virginia Tech avoided FSU, but maybe not. It's been a rough start for FSU. It feels like the college football playoff is already out of the question already. It's been 2 games. I mean, just what a rough way to start the season, man. They're 0-2, both of them are conference losses, and the season is probably over. After the way last year went, FSU has now lost 3 straight since that ACC title without Jordan Travis. They obviously got blown out by Georgia in their bowl game and have now lost back-to-back to Georgia Tech and Boston College. Life in Tallahassee ain't pretty right now, but here's the good news. Florida is so bad that they could still win that rivalry game. I mean, that is probably not even worth watching at this point. Florida versus FSU this year is gonna be brutal. But I just have to say, man, if you are an FSU fan, I'm sorry. This sucks.